Hi guys, it's me Chazza HD and welcome to a full review of pre-season testing for the 2022 Formula 1 season that of course has taken place in Bahrain over the last 3 days, and thankfully by the end of these 3 days of testing it looks as though we have mostly an order that I think we can be confident on going into the season. It's not the same order, thankfully, as last season. It is shaken up slightly, I think, in certain areas. And without doubt, it is going to be, I think, throughout the entire field, a very competitive Formula 1 season. And there's going to be plenty to talk about in this stream. What we're going to talk about is we're going to go through the best lap times of all the teams so far, or not so far, but in testing overall, because of course that will help give us an indication as to the pace of the cars. And then we will go into each team respectively. I'll get into how they've done in the 3 days of testing, and then also I will get into how I think they are looking pace-wise, and probably for the first Grand Prix, give an indication as to where I think they will be for this Formula 1 season. Hopefully you guys are doing well, and hopefully you're just as excited as I am for the new season, which of course starts next weekend. And this time next week, of course, we'll know who does have the best cars on the grid for certain. But before we go on to the teams, we're going to first get on to the results and the best lap times from each team during the Bahrain test. So let me just hide this and that, and we'll move on now to the best time. So this is, it's not all of the best times from the, all the top 10 best times from testing. It's the best time, like I said, from each team in the second test. So the best time overall, Max Verstappen, a 1:31.7 on the C5 tyre. That is definitely the standout time, and for me puts him in, no pun intended, pole position for probably victory, or at least a very good chance of victory in Bahrain in a week's time. Charles Leclerc second in the Ferrari, 1:32.4. His best lap was done on the C4 compound. Ferrari definitely are still going to be fighting at the front of the field, I feel. It's for certain in Bahrain and the early part of the season. They've definitely got a very strong car. Maybe not as strong as we were thinking, but they do have a strong car. Third, surprisingly, was Fernando Alonso in the Alpine on a 1:32.6. That was done on the C4 compound. I do think, though, that the Alpine was definitely running a bit skinnier on fuel. George Russell, his best time in the Mercedes was a 1:32.7, over a second slower than Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. And Russell did his best time on the C5 compound, which is about 2 to 3 tenths of a second, as I've said many times before, quicker than the C4 that Verstappen, or not the C4, no, Verstappen did his time on the C5, what am I on about? So yeah, a second off on the same tyre, and Mercedes, as we'll get into in a moment, are definitely struggling at this current moment. Valtteri Bottas in fifth. The best time for Alfa Romeo of a 1:32.9 on the C3 compound. I will say, though, with Alfa Romeo and Haas, they're definitely, I think, on this final few hours that we saw of testing earlier on, I think they definitely did the most aggressive runs out of anyone, because I don't think that, Bottas and the Alfa Romeo is going to be that competitive this season. I would love for that to be the case, but I don't think he will be, that competitive. Yuki Tsunoda then in P6 on a 1:33.0. He did his best time on the C5, I think. Mick Schumacher 7th, 1:33.1 on the C3. I know people may say, well, he did a better lap time in the final 2 hours after the official end of testing, but I'm not going to count that because he had the advantage of more running and a better track condition, most likely. So yeah, his best time during the official session, 1:33.1 on the C3 compound. I don't think, though, the Haas will be as close to other, midfield teams as it is, but Haas are definitely going to be competitive to a certain extent this season. And then Lando Norris, it's McLaren's best time of the Bahrain test of 1:33.1. That was done on the C3 compound, which I actually think shows McLaren do have some good pace. Maybe not front-running pace, but good pace nonetheless. And then Sebastian Vettel, his best time of 1:33.8. Not great, to be honest, on the C4 compound. And then Williams' best time of a 1:35.0. But Williams didn't really do any low fuel running today. Yesterday, they had a rear brake fire, which meant they missed about 6.5 hours of running. So that time of 1:35.0 was actually from day one. So I don't think we can say right now how good Williams actually are, because I think, their best time was not done in as good a condition as all the others. But those are the best times for each team. Keep that in mind as we go through the teams one by one. And let me just quickly get up the order again of today's running, which is, kind of has a lot of similarity to this. And let's now go into the teams. First off, Mercedes. And I think today proved whether, you look at the car on track and how it handles, or you look at the lap times in comparison to the fuel load and engine mode we think they're running compared to Ferrari and Red Bull and what tyres they're on. There's no way you can really shape it to look like Mercedes have come out of this second test with a really good car. They are not front-running or absolute front-running contenders at the moment. I think in a week's time in Bahrain, I don't think they will be, miles off the pace, but Lewis Hamilton said it in the afternoon whilst Russell was in the car when he did a media conference of some sort, that Mercedes are not in a position right now to contend for race victories. And honestly, I would have to believe him. I just don't think that Mercedes are right now a race-winning team. I think they'll get there. Absolutely, I think they'll get there. But it probably won't be until race, 5, 6, really, in the Formula 1 season, where I think they'll probably start to close that gap to teams like Red Bull and Ferrari. I mean, there's doubt right now, certain doubt that, they might not even be in the top 3 quickest teams. Maybe McLaren are quicker than them, because Norris was only 0.4 slower than Russell on a compound quite a bit slower than Russell. So, yeah, Mercedes, this is probably the worst they have come out of a test looking really into the, going into a first race. This is the worst they have looked probably since 2012, 2011. It's been a long, long time since Mercedes have looked, like this. Even in 2012, 2013, I think people still, or people felt they were, certainly at the start of those seasons, able to probably win races or contend for victories. But at the moment, with the way you see the car on track, hear the drivers speak about it, hear most people in the paddock speak about it, Mercedes are just not in a position right now, I think, to contend for victories. But if you are a Mercedes fan or a Lewis Hamilton fan or a George Russell fan, don't get too down, because like I said, they will close the gap. They will definitely become faster, I think, in 5 or 6 races' time. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be, by the midpoint of the season or the second half of the season after the summer break. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to have the best car or are going to be able to seriously challenge the, Red Bull's Ferrari cars, but they are going to get better. I don't think Mercedes are going to just stall out or get worse. I just don't think that is really a possibility. But yeah, really throughout the whole test, the rear end has been not that stable. There's rumours that in the fast corners, that's where Mercedes are really struggling right now, when in the slower corners, they are looking very good, which would point to rear instability, because you really do need rear stability through fast corners to have, the best overall package for your car. So yeah, Mercedes have a lot to work on, a lot to understand about their car. We'll see what they do in Bahrain, but I think Mercedes are probably now, as I speak, third or fourth quickest team. I'd probably say, about equal with McLaren. It is pretty hard to say in comparison to McLaren exactly where Mercedes are, but honestly, right now, I don't think they are at all, going to be competing with certainly Red Bull and probably Ferrari as well in the Grand Prix next weekend. Even if they bring an upgrade, it's not going to just, massively change things. It really is not going to. So, yeah, going to be a bit of a struggle to start with, I think, this season, but it probably will and should, given how good of a team they are, get better. Next up is Red Bull, and we saw at the start of the day, by the way, if you haven't seen my watch along from earlier, the covering the entire afternoon session, then make sure after this stream to go and watch it. We covered at the start of that stream that Red Bull brought a new side pod upgrade, and clearly it has worked, because this car, compared to, say, yesterday, looks miles better. And to be honest, yesterday it looked pretty good. Red Bull are looking as strong, if not stronger, than they were this time last year. And of course, this time last year, they were very, very quick. Really should have won the Bahrain Grand Prix last year with Max Verstappen. And right now, as I sit here, I'd have to say Max Verstappen is the favourite to win next weekend. The Red Bull car looks so well balanced. They did have front end issues, but it seems as though they have now fixed those issues. The rear end, even before this new upgrade, was very, very stable and very, very good. I can't really look at Red Bull and think negatively. They just look very, very strong. We'll have to see, of course, whether Ferrari, once they start to push harder next weekend, whether things will actually be a bit closer than I'm expecting. But I think with Verstappen in that Red Bull, with how confident he looks in that Red Bull, it's pretty ominous, I think, going into the next, or into the first Grand Prix next weekend. He is looking very, very good. And like I said, the only thing I think that could really stop Red Bull is if Ferrari finally show their full hand and blow the field away with an absolute amazing pace in Bahrain, which, maybe they could do, but after what we saw today, I think even they would be a bit surprised about how quick Red Bull are in comparison to yesterday, where they did not have the side pod and floor upgrade to the Red Bull. I still think things will be close in the first Grand Prix between Red Bull, Red Bull and Ferrari. But I think if I was to bet right now, who would I favour? It would be Red Bull by probably a couple tenths of a second. Certainly with Max Verstappen driving at the wheel of that Red Bull. So if you're a Verstappen fan or Red Bull fan, you've got to be surely very confident going into this season, because after winning the championship last year, Red Bull have produced another brilliant racing car, and they look very good for this new Formula One season. Next up, we'll go to Ferrari. And Ferrari, I have to stress, because of course I was talking them up a lot over the first couple of days of testing and really after the first shakedown in Barcelona. We have to stress that even though Red Bull have shown their pace today and they look probably the strongest by, like I said, probably a couple tenths of a second at the moment, Ferrari are still looking good. They are still absolutely in contention for victory next weekend. We've seen Charles Leclerc. He's been very good at this circuit in years past, and I have no doubt he will be giving Max Verstappen in that Ferrari a very, very good run for his money. And I think absolutely Ferrari have the pace to get definitely 2 cars on the podium and maybe a race win as well. We do have to remember that Ferrari have not won a Grand Prix in 2.5 years, which is a long time for a team like Ferrari. That is I think that's their longest drought when it comes to a race win since the early 1990s, where, of course, famously they were horrific and just a laughing stock for, considering the big name that they are. But I think Ferrari are definitely there in contention. I just think that if Max Verstappen drives like we saw sometimes in 2021, where, if he keeps it all together, just produces the pace when he needs to, and consistently can be quick in that Red Bull, I just think Max will be too much for Charles Leclerc and Ferrari. But you never know. Like I said, Leclerc has been known to be very quick in Bahrain in years past, so we'll see what he is able to do. Great to see, of course, Ferrari are now back as a front-running team for the first time since 2019. Hopefully, a lot has been learnt since 2019, and hopefully they will, no matter what, contend for victory. And if they do get the victory, then good on them. But they absolutely have a car quick enough to get that. The car is kind of like the Red Bull. It's very stable. It doesn't really have any issues. Front end, rear end, no instability, no understeer really that you can see, no real oversteer. It looks like a car that really responds well to what the drivers want. So yeah, a good car, and hopefully for Ferrari, a good Formula 1 season. Next up is McLaren. And McLaren, despite not having that great of a test, I have to say, because of reliability issues, they're still having issues with the brakes, with the rising temperatures in them. So that hopefully they can get that fixed by next weekend, because it will hamper their ability, of course, to get a properly good result next weekend. But I think fundamentally they do have a quick car. Is it as quick as the Red Bull and the Ferrari? No, I don't think it is. But if you compare it to Mercedes, I think they are right there with Mercedes and could possibly beat them next weekend in the Grand Prix. And if we get a close race, or maybe one of the Red Bulls and one of the Ferraris retires from the race, McLaren could absolutely be on the podium next weekend. They do have a good car, and we know two very good drivers indeed. Hopefully Daniel Ricciardo recovers from COVID, as of course we know that he tested positive for COVID. So yeah, hopefully he recovers from that. If he doesn't, it looks as though Oscar Piastri is going to be in the McLaren for next weekend's Grand Prix, because McLaren and Alpine thankfully have struck a partnership, and Alpine are allowing McLaren the chance to have Piastri in their car if one of their drivers during the season is unable to race. So that's great to see. But yeah, I think McLaren, if you're a McLaren fan, the only thing really to worry about is reliability. If they get that sorted, I think you can be confident in what's coming up this season. And I think definitely they will have their chances when it comes to podiums, race wins. I honestly think they are going to be a pretty good outfit in 2022. Will Norris get his first win this season? If he continues like he drove, most of last season, you'd have to say yes. Hopefully he can, and hopefully Ricciardo, when he gets back in the car, will produce some of that form we saw for Renault in 2020. But yeah, the McLaren car, it does look kind of similar to the Ferrari in that it is very stable and looks good. It just isn't as good as the Ferrari. It's probably lacking, 0.3 of a second probably to the Ferrari, and probably another couple tenths to Red Bull. So I wouldn't say right now McLaren are absolute front-running material, but they're definitely going to be very competitive as long as, like I said, they are reliable in Bahrain next weekend. Let's now move on to AlphaTauri. And AlphaTauri, I think, and people may disagree with this because, of course, Alonso did his quicker lap towards the end. And also, Alfa Romeo and Haas are looking competitive. But I still feel as though that AlphaTauri are the strongest looking midfield team. The car looks, to me, to be the best out of the midfield runners. Alpine, when you compare them to AlphaTauri, they've been a bit messy in the tests. They don't have the reliability absolutely nailed down as of yet. So we're yet to see really what they're looking like, Alpine, on that end of things. But I think AlphaTauri, I think they're in a similar position to this time last year, where they will be, after those top 4 teams, definitely with Pierre Gasly, maybe Yuki Tsunoda as well, they will be top 10 contenders. If you compare them to any of the other midfield teams, I think honestly Alfa Romeo and Haas were pushing a lot harder in this day of testing today. And with Aston Martin, I think Aston Martin are actually very bad right now, which I think most people would probably agree with. Aston Martin are not looking good at all. And then the only other team is Williams, who... It's pretty hard to say where Williams are. We'll have to see next weekend, literally. So yeah, AlphaTauri, I think they have the strongest car. The only real main rival at the moment, I would say to them, is probably Alpine, who will be in the ballpark of where they are. Maybe they'll be quicker. I could easily be wrong. But them and Alpine, I would say, yeah, probably the 5th and 6th quickest teams right now. Hopefully they have a good season. Because, of course, it'd be great to see, Pierre Gasly have another good season and continue to show how great of a driver he is. And Tsunoda, of course, had a decent end to last season, and it would be great to see him have a better season. I probably should point this out. I mean, I'm going to point this out probably in a video I'm going to do next week. One thing people need to remember when we go through these midfield teams is right now, yeah, they're definitely slower than those top 4 teams. They're probably, say, the front end of the midfield. Your teams like AlphaTauri and Alpine are probably a second or 1.2 seconds off the pace. But remember, teams like AlphaTauri, Alpine, Aston Martin, Williams, even Haas and Alfa Romeo, because last season they finished quite a bit lower in the championship, they will have extra wind tunnel time, and they will be able to make up, hopefully, some of the difference. I mean, they're not going to make it up to the point where they're competing right alongside them, but a team like AlphaTauri, they finished 6th in the Constructors last season. And when you look at Mercedes at the moment, who are probably only, I don't know, a half a second maybe quicker than AlphaTauri at the moment, Mercedes, I think, will improve their car, but AlphaTauri will have an extra, 20-30% wind tunnel time during the season. So, again, when it comes to all these midfield teams, do keep that in mind that, just because they're starting the year clearly away from those front-running teams, doesn't mean by the end of the season that that's still going to be the case. It could be the case that a team like AlphaTauri or Alpine or Aston Martin are kind of in the fight with those teams, if not just slightly behind them. We'll see, and I'm hoping that role, that I guess development token system, will really come out and show how great of a system it is in this season. Because especially if you get a team like Alfa Romeo or Haas, who say have a surprisingly good car at the start of the season, because they finished so low in last year's championship, hopefully they'll be able to develop the car to the point where they, maybe start bridging the gap between the midfield and the front runners, and maybe have a couple surprisingly good results. We'll have to see. But yeah, do remember that when it comes to these midfield teams over the course of the season. And if you are fans of these teams, especially remember that, because your fortunes could change during the season. Now, next up, we'll go to Alpine. And Alpine, I've had a very messy test / shakedown from Barcelona. Of course, with Barcelona, they had a DRS issue, and then a breakdown on the final day. Here in Bahrain, didn't really get any better. Ocon broke down, of course, yesterday, and then they didn't have that much running on day 1 either. This was really the only day of testing where they've actually showed what their pace probably is for the season. And it looks to me to be probably around AlphaTauri. I don't think they're quicker at the moment because I do think AlphaTauri were holding back over the last couple of days. I think Alpine really just put in a quick lap at the end to make sure they got some sort of baseline for next week. So I don't think Alpine will be, that quick with Fernando Alonso. Of course, it'd be great if he was that quick, but I don't think he ultimately will be. But they're in the fight, absolutely. Alpine are basically around where they were at the midpoint of last season in terms of the pecking order, about 5th or 6th quickest, which is, for them, I mean, they would have been hoping for better, obviously, but it's not too bad. And like I said, with the development token system, they could end up not being too slow compared to the front runners in the end. But reliability, I feel, might be the biggest Achilles heel of this team, certainly for the first few races of the season. Of course, we heard rumours in the off-season that Renault were pushing very hard on the power unit side and that there were reliability issues, which they kind of confirmed by saying that, yeah, they were pushing things because that's the way they want to go now, and they don't want to think of, reliability first. So, yeah, that I think, especially, next week in a hot Bahrain Grand Prix, then the weekend after a hot, probably Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, that could be a big issue for them in terms of finishing the race, scoring points, and having good results. But I think as the season goes on, I think they'll probably improve Alpine. May even end the season as the quickest midfield team like they were heading at actually the end of last season, where they were actually very, very quick. But as long as reliability doesn't become too much of an issue, then I don't see why they can't have a decent season. Next up, though, is Aston Martin. Now, Aston Martin are really not looking good. That car looks, I'm not going to say the worst car on the grid, but it's not too far away from that. It's pretty bad. The amount of times at turn 8 at the Sakhir Circuit, we saw this car understeer clean wide. Not just understeer like a bit. We're talking like you have to abort the lap because you've lost so much time. It just doesn't look at all like a car you'd want to drive. It doesn't look like it really lacks. It doesn't really look like it has that much downforce. I'm not sure they have the worst car, but honestly, right now, I would say, I'd probably say they're, I think, definitely not going to be contending in the top 10. I don't think that's a possibility with this car. I think, honestly, they're going to be probably struggling to get out of Q1 with this car at the moment. I think things will probably improve as the season goes on. Again, because of those development tokens, that might help things, but I just don't see, I don't see really anything here with this car to suggest that this team is going to be a dark horse or a strong contender. I just don't see anything like it. We were hoping, of course, that this year would be the start of them producing that type of form. But there's no way they're going to produce that type of form with this car. This car is pretty bad, especially on the front end. I do feel a bit sorry for Sebastian Vettel and Lance Stroll, to be honest, because it's going to be a tough season. It is going to be a tough season. What do I see for the season? Aston Martin? Trying to think. I mean, again, I don't think they'll have the worst car, but they might be in a position kind of like Alfa Romeo from last season, where occasionally they'll get into Q2, but most of the time they'll be just trying to fight to get out of Q1. Most of the time probably failing. It's not a good car. It is a car that is going to catch your eye, I think, this season for being pretty bad. Definitely caught my eye for being pretty bad. Over at the second test, and also in Barcelona, there were, talk of the Aston Martin car looking quite poor on track, especially for the porpoising issue that we see Mercedes struggle with. So, yeah, Not good. Not good at all. Hopefully they improve during the season, but it just looks and reeks of a bad car. And when you come into the season with that type of car, it doesn't really tend to improve during the season. Maybe they'll close the gap to the front runners at a certain point of the season with a big upgrade, but if it's a bad car, it's a bad car. Next up is Williams, and it's hard to say, really, with Williams, where they are. I think they're probably a step forward on last year. Car has actually looked pretty good when I've seen it on track. It looks stable. Very nice, nimble-looking car. Nice design, nice concept that they have gone for, Williams Racing. And I think they will have a decent season. I think they'll probably get some points finishes this season with this car. Probably won't be, say, as strong as AlphaTauri Alpine, but I think they will have a decent season for sure. Alpine and AlphaTauri, I'd probably say, have a half a second gap to a team like Williams. I do actually think the midfield is still pretty tight, but I think for a team like Williams, they are still lacking a bit of time to those two teams. Unfortunately, we didn't get really representative times from Albon or Latifi today on the soft compound tyre, so it's hard to say really where Williams are exactly. But I think they're going to be a team who probably get into Q2 a few times, or maybe we'll get one car into Q2 probably at 90% of races. Maybe occasionally, once or twice, they'll get a car into Q3. We'll have to see, but I think they'll be a decent contender, a few points finishes, and probably be, 7th or 8th in the championship this season. Again, though, if they start off the season actually a bit better than that, given the amount of extra wind tunnel time they'll get for finishing 8th in the championship last year, Williams could end the season with quite a good car, but hard to say, like I said, exactly where they are right now because of the lack of representative running today. Next up, Alfa Romeo. A shame that the day ended with a reliability problem, because Valtteri Bottas's lap was actually very strong and it looked as though he was going to continue with those quick laps. I do feel as though it was a bit of a glory run because Alfa Romeo did, as it was pointed out to me in the watch-along, Alfa Romeo did last year do a glory run towards the end. So I don't think they are quite that quick. I don't think Alfa Romeo are going to be, say, the quickest midfield team or anything like that. I think they will probably be, with the midfield, it's hard to say. I think the 5th and 6th quickest teams, the front of the midfield pack, I would say, again, is AlphaTauri and Alpine. But then you've got a gaggle of teams all competing for 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th. And those teams are Alfa Romeo, Aston Martin, Williams and Haas. And it's hard at the moment to say where they all are. Aston Martin look bad. Williams didn't really do a proper low fuel run in representative conditions compared to the rest. And I think Alfa Romeo and Haas did a bit of a glory run. So that's why I say it's hard to say hard to say exactly who is where in the swing of things. I think Alfa Romeo will probably be, in the end, around where they were last season. Maybe the 8th quickest car or something like that. Maybe they'll be a bit closer to the front. We'll have to see, but I don't think they were as quick, are as quick as they, possibly showed in the test earlier. Maybe they'll be closer to the front of the field, but that maybe could be said for all the teams, to be honest. But overall, pace-wise, not too bad. Reliability, not that great. Obviously breaking down at the end, and also they did have a couple issues on day 1 and day 2 where they couldn't really get the running in that they wanted. Valtteri Bottas, though, did get a full race run in the first couple hours of the afternoon session today, which would have been good for him. But that is still a concern for the Alfa Romeo team. Hopefully, they can get it all sorted by this time next week. But they'll be, kind of in the same part of the grid they were last season. Now, finally, we'll go to Haas F1. And for Haas, I don't think they will be... Well, they might be last in the championship still, who knows? But I don't think they will be in a situation last season, or like last season, where they were only racing themselves. I think they'll be racing other cars this season, thankfully. The lack of development to focus on this year's car for the last couple of years looks as though it's paid off a bit. Not massively, but a bit. And I think Haas will be, like I said, they'll be in that gaggle of the last four, or the slowest four teams on the grid. It would be I think, a very good season, to be honest, if they were to jump from, say, 10th to 7th or 8th in the Constructors. I think that would be a very good step forward. Also, it'd be great to see Mick Schumacher, properly racing other cars. Also, be great to see Kevin Magnussen, who, of course, is back in Formula 1, getting back in the thick of it. But yeah, I think Haas definitely competitive with other teams, but it's hard to say, again, with those four teams, exactly who is where. But I think with Haas, I think you will see them probably 2 or 3 times get a point this season or more. But I don't think it'll be, I don't think it'll be a regular or semi-regular thing. So they'll probably be, say, 8th, maybe 9th in the championship at the end of it all. So, yeah, Haas looking a lot better. If you're a Haas fan, then I think you're definitely going to have a more interesting season than last year, where last year you were just praying that the car didn't get lapped more than 3 times. They'll still be getting lapped this season, but just not as many times as they were last season. Probably only once per race. That would be probably a good achievement in comparison to last year. But, yeah, the midfield, honestly, I'd say is pretty hard to... Pretty hard to really tell who is exactly where. Let me just read the chat, by the way, before I move on. By the way, great to see so many of you in chat. And I just want to say to you guys who are watching, if you are new, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this, because I'll be doing plenty more content for F1, of course. The Bahrain Grand Prix is next weekend, and I will, in a few minutes' time, reveal what my schedule is for next week, and you won't be disappointed. There is plenty of stuff heading your way in the second half of next week. So, yeah, make sure if you are new to the channel to subscribe for more content like this. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there. Or go to my channel page and do it there. Watch it there. Hit the notifications bell. And as well, smash the like button and share this video and channel everywhere you can. And as well, smash the like button. And, did I say smash the like button before? I can't remember. And, yeah, just share my video and channel everywhere you can. And, as well, follow me on Twitter at ChazHD5. By the way, it's been a long day, so sorry if I did repeat myself, but like I said, it has been a long-ass day. Let's see if there's any other news we can get into. Let's have a look. Yeah, there's a couple things. There are a couple things. Yeah, let's get into them. So we'll start with Alfa Romeo. So Alfa Romeo, of course, had a better day today, even though the reliability wasn't all the best. And Valtteri Bottas is really starting, quote, to like the car. But there are definitely reliability concerns. Bottas is, here's a quote from him, saying, "I'll be more confident once we speak with the team next week and when I hear that all the issues we understand 100%. And we make sure that they don't happen again." Because at the moment, his biggest concern is doing a race distance, which I understand why, but he did do one, I think, or most of one in the afternoon session. He says, otherwise, in terms of performance, my feeling for now is that the team has made a clear step from last year, and that's nice to see. You know, testing, we can't say in detail, but it's not far off where we should be, which kind of points to what I was saying in terms of where they'll be. I don't think they'll be, you know, right in the thick of it. I don't think they'll be that good, where they're, you know, 5th or 6th quickest on the grid. But he also went on to say, when it works, it's not bad. I was really starting to like the car, both high fuel and a little bit lower fuel. It felt pretty decent. We got a clear direction on the setup that we still need to go to extract more performance. Still, it's not easy in general to turn the car quickly and early enough in the corners. I think it's also a characteristic of the new tyres. They are quite weak on the combined braking and steering, the front tyres especially. It was a good day for learning, and the main thing is we just need to fix all the issues we've been having now. It's good to hear that they've got a positive baseline from this test, because really in the last couple of years, Alfa Romeo have come away from testing just not really in a position to do anything for the season, which of course has resulted in them becoming a team that is just, what do you call it? That is just in the middle of nowhere, pretty much, in Formula One. Hopefully, we can put a bit of an end to that this season. Next up, we'll go back to Ferrari, as Bonotto is saying that Ferrari are still outsiders and not the favourites, and they are behind Mercedes and Red Bull, which I think is absolute bullshit. But let's see what he has to say. He says, we are not the favourites. I think the favourites are the teams that were the best last year because they are strong teams. They have proved they can be very fast. They've got a fantastic team. On track, I think they are showing very, very fast. I think they are favourites. We are outsiders. To be honest, I think they are just playing down expectations from, you know, the media. I think they know they have a quick car. I don't think they actually think that behind closed doors. They know they have a car quick enough to win next weekend's Grand Prix, and I think they know that they are quicker than Mercedes, but he's just saying, you know, I guess the typical line you would say coming out of testing is, no, we're not going to do that well. We're just, you know, where we were last season, because of course it does take the pressure off. It does take the pressure off that team. He did, though, declare himself satisfied with Ferrari's progress over the 2 tests. He says, overall, it's been 6 good days of testing, clean, making a lot of mileage, running reliable. I think getting a lot of data, which was very important to the start of the season, understanding the car, correlating it with back at Maranello, all the simulators, the wind tunnel, I think it's been positive in that respect. So after 6 days, we know pretty much our car. We know it's certainly better. There is still much to come, but positive, I would say. He kind of gives it away at the end that, you know, he actually does think that they have a good car. So, yeah. When it comes to that quote, if you see it online, just don't pay attention to it, because he's basically just bullshitting everyone. And the only other thing I can see is this other article that we'll get into with Mercedes. So, Lewis Hamilton, again, after his running in the morning session, he came out to talk to the media, and he has doubts that Mercedes will bounce back from their troubled start in testing as easily as they did last year. He did say it was clear that Mercedes are not contenders for pole position and victory at the moment. He said, no, at the moment we're not. I'm sure everyone can kind of figure that out. We are not the quickest at the moment. I think Ferrari looked to be the quickest, and perhaps Red Bull, and then maybe us or McLaren. I don't know, but we're certainly not at the top. And then in comparison to 12 months ago, he says it feels a lot different. It's not going to look as good as it did last year, with the difficult session we had in practice and then switched over to the race. I think we have far bigger challenges this time, and they're not 1 week turnarounds. It will take a little bit longer, but from what I'm told, we have a considerable amount of pace to find. And then he responds to the comment from Carlos Sainz that Mercedes were deliberately playing down expectations. Hamilton responded by saying those who believe they are playing a PR game with the comments over the lack of performance are in for a surprise. He said, at the moment, I don't think we'll be competing for wins, but there is potential within our car to get us there. We've just got to learn to be able to extract it and fix some of the problems, which is what we are working on. Everyone is doing such an incredible job back at the factory, working as hard as they can, but we have some hurdles to overcome. Obviously, next week we'll get a much better showing of our pace. And then ends it by saying, but I think people will be surprised, or at least the people who keep talking about let me repeat that. Or at least the people who keep talking about we are talking ourselves down. It's a bit different this year, and I have to agree. People who think it's, similar to last year, where, Mercedes, they were definitely slower than Red Bull this time last year after the pre-season test in Bahrain. Of course, that time last year, there was a 2-week break in between the test in Bahrain and the first race, when this time there's only a week. If you compare it to last year, the gap between them and the quickest car at that time, Red Bull, was not as big as it is now. They are, at best, half a second a lap slower than Red Bull, I would say. At the absolute best. I would be very surprised if they could get within a third of a second of Max or Leclerc or whoever is on pole position in Bahrain. I would be very, very surprised. Like I said, I think they'll get quicker during the season. I'm not sure they will have the best car on the grid at any point this season. I think there'll probably be some races this season where they have a car that ends up winning because it produces great pace, or Lewis Hamilton puts in a great drive that we know he can. Same for Russell. I think that can absolutely happen and probably will happen, but I don't think it's going to be a season where Mercedes, after 5 races, figure the car out, bolt on a new upgrade, and they're straight back to being right at the front of the field. I think anyone who thinks that is very naive in their thinking and just very simplistic. If you look further into this test and how the cars have looked and the comments from everyone, especially the people at Mercedes, it's not, it's not as simple as that. And for the people who also say that Mercedes always play themselves down during testing, whilst I do agree with that, they have never once, since 2014, they have never once said, we are not front-running contenders, or, we're not going to be able to contend for victory at the start of the season. They've never said that. They never did last year. Even in 2019, with that infamous, we're half a second slower possibly than Ferrari right now. Not even then did Lewis Hamilton or anyone majorly at Mercedes say, we are not able to contend for victory right now. Nobody has said that coming out of testing, again, since the start of the hybrid era. So this is completely different to what we've seen in years past. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see where they are in Bahrain. I think most likely they'll be on the 3rd row of the grid at the absolute best. Maybe 4th and 5th, but I'd be very surprised if they got a car in the top 3. And they'd probably be very happy with that if they got a car inside the top 3 on the grid, because they don't look like they're really able to do that right now. And of course, with the first 2 races being a double header, it impacts them not only for Bahrain, but Saudi Arabia as well, because if they're going to be that slow in Bahrain, they're also going to be slow in Saudi Arabia, because they're not going to really be able to make much of a difference to the car. And then in Melbourne, the 3rd race, I doubt they'll bring an upgrade there because of how far away it is. And then the 4th race is at Imola, which I think will be the first race we really see, especially for the teams who are struggling, see, some upgrades coming to the cars. So, yeah, going to take probably a month and a half, 2 months until you see this car really start to improve and close the gap to the front runners. But I think what I'll do is now move to the chat to see what you guys have to say. So in the chat, make sure to post your comments, ask any questions that you want to regarding the cars, what I think will happen this season. Just go for it in chat, and I'll read out some comments from you guys, and I'll make sure to show some different pictures on the screen when I can. I'll move on to... Oh, sorry. I'll move on to the Ferraris I hiccuped there. Yeah, I'll try and alternate between pictures if I can. But yeah, let me know in the chat, what do you think of the cars at the minute? How do you think things are looking? How is the pace of the cars in your opinion? Let me know in chat, and I'll start reading some comments out. McLaren DNF next week, asks Adam Osborne. It's sad to say, but it is highly probable. I think they're a team who, on the reliability side, probably like Alpine, they might struggle for the first 2 or 3 races, maybe even longer than that. And then by half season, they'll probably, and hopefully, get on top of it. Crystal Racing says Bonotto taking or talking Ferrari down as always. Bonotto gaslighting us. I'm not sure I'd call it gaslighting. I think that's a bit extreme. Haas went from having the worst driver lineup to arguably the 5th best lineup. Magnussen and Schumacher the 5th best driver lineup. No, I wouldn't go for that. I mean, I'm not saying that's what you're saying, but I'm not sure I'd say 5th best. Maybe 7th or 8th best. I think 5th best is probably pushing it. Looks like a P1 Ferrari or Red Bull. Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen over the 3 days of testing, I'd have to agree. Haas looking good? Question mark. A lot better than last season, no doubt. They'll be racing on the cars. They won't be finishing last this season, or at least not every race. Let me look at some other comments here. See any other good ones. Aya Kid, I think it is, says Mercedes are talking BS in my opinion. Maybe they won't win in Bahrain, but the next 2 races, it's normal service resumed. I completely disagree. Like I said, if they're not quick in Bahrain, they're not going to be quick in Saudi Arabia either, because it's a race, a week later. And if you look at the Saudi Arabia track, it's different to the Bahrain track, but if you actually believe what people have been saying, that the Mercedes and the high-speed corners is struggling, Saudi Arabia, the track, the Jeddah circuit, it's pretty much high-speed corners, especially that first sector. You don't want a out-of-shape rear end through that first sector, because if you do, you could end up heavily in the wall, and even at in the middle sector as well. So they'll probably be worse off, if that is true about the rear end and the fast corners. They'll probably be worse off in Saudi than they will be in Bahrain, because at least with Bahrain there are slower corners where apparently they are very good in, which points to basically a car that is nice and settled and grippy on the front end, but the rear end just keeps stepping out. Ferrari, hold on, missed that comment. Ferrari championship material. Considering the drivers they have and the car they have, I think you'd have to say yes. I'm not going to yet predict who I think is going to win the championship, because I'm going to get onto why I'm not going to give that prediction as of yet, because I'm actually going to give it in a few days' time. But yeah, I think you'd have to say so. Leclerc and Sainz are 2 very, very good drivers. Very good car. Also, we have to remember that because Ferrari finished 3rd last year, they will have 10% more development time in the wind tunnel compared to Mercedes and Red Bull. So, if it gets that close, it could come down to that, and Ferrari have the advantage when it comes to that. So yeah, I think you'd have to say title contenders for sure. Bristol Racing says, prediction, Max wins World Championship with 2 races to spare. To be honest, I think given what we've seen now from this test and what we've seen from the Red Bull with this new upgrade, I think Max Verstappen has to be the favourite to win the championship, because of where Mercedes are at the moment, and there's no guarantee they'll get on top of those issues and get the car quick enough to win races soon enough, because they don't want to be, giving away too many points to Verstappen and Red Bull if, Verstappen and Red Bull really do have a very quick car. But if it's let's say if it's a Verstappen versus Leclerc fight for the championship, I mean, Leclerc's a very quick driver, but we have to remember Max has the experience of fighting for a championship now and is the world champion. Charles Leclerc has never raced, he's never contended for a championship before. And we've seen, even last season, that he does sometimes in a Formula 1 season have a few races where he makes a mistake or is just off the boil. And there's no guarantee Charles Leclerc will even be the main contender for the Ferrari team to win the championship. Also, you have to remember, if it is, say, a Verstappen versus Leclerc title fight, or Verstappen versus Leclerc and Sainz, possibly, is that the pressure isn't really on that much for Red Bull and Verstappen, because Verstappen is the world champion. Red Bull, they're, a great team in that. When with Ferrari, they haven't won a race in 2.5 years. They have way more expectation and hope on them from, the fans worldwide. And they have this title drought of 14 years. That pressure's not on Red Bull. And for Ferrari it is. And there is no doubt, if we get to, say, Monza and Leclerc's leading the championship by 2 points, the pressure's going to be on. It really is. Because the whole of Italy is basically going to be desperate that Ferrari break the title drought, just like it was back in 2017 and 2018. So, really, I think Max will be hoping it's him versus the two Ferrari drivers for the championship because of the pressures that the Ferrari drivers will come under. Considering all those factors I just discussed. If it was against Lewis Hamilton, Hamilton, 7-time world champion, been there and done that. And we know Hamilton can absolutely beat Verstappen. Obviously, last season he didn't, for whatever reasons you want to believe. So yeah, I think Verstappen, I'd have to say, is the title favourite, I would say. Doesn't mean that I think he will win the championship, but it'd be silly to say that he's not the favourite. Ferrari look bulletproof. What do you think about Alpine? Like I said, with Alpine, they look decent. Who do you think will win this season? I'll get onto that in a later video, but it's not going to be a massive surprise, to be honest, who I think. Crystal Racing says Perez might prove to be a liability this year and could be sacked after 2022. That's kind of what I was saying in my driver predictions video, which, by the way, if you've not seen that, I uploaded that earlier this week, and I went for some interesting predictions, for sure. And, yeah, I think you guys will be interested by that. Will Sainz or Leclerc be the number one driver for Ferrari? Asks, I think, is it Zhao in the chat. It depends purely on who is ahead in the championship, I think. And I said this in my driver lineup prediction video for 2023, obviously looking at who I think will be in whatever team for the 2023 season. People need to remember, Carlos Sainz is out of contract at the end of this year. He does have an option for another year, which, I mean, we've heard talk today that they are, in the renewal phase. But Charles Leclerc has a contract until the end of 2024, and Leclerc really is supposed to be the team leader for Ferrari. That's why he was signed onto that contract. A similar way why Verstappen is on a contract now until 2028. The same with Lando Norris at McLaren, on a contract until 2025. Because they have the teams committed to those drivers as their team leaders. That's what Ferrari did with Leclerc. But with Leclerc losing to Sainz last season, it's kind of upset the apple cart. And I just feel as though this season, that's going to become an issue. I think they will have a bit of an issue, Ferrari, this season with those two, because the thing is, if it's Red Bull versus Ferrari for the championship, you can be in no doubt of who is, going to be the man at Red Bull that the team get behind. It's going to be, obviously, Max Verstappen. When with Ferrari, it's kind of a similar situation to Massa and Raikkonen back in 07 and 08, where the team doesn't really commit to their driver for the championship until, the last 3 or 4 races, which could get messy. It could get very messy, and I think that's definitely going to play into Red Bull's hands if it is a Red Bull-Ferrari title fight in 2022. Sean O'Keefe says, would be interesting to see what any sports car teams successful at Le Mans speculate on the rules and porpoising. J663 says, I've missed that comment. I think we'll get a 130 point something in quali next week for pole. Yeah, I agree with that. It'll be somewhere in the 1 minute 30s. Dennis asks, did you think Ferrari was struggling more today when they were pushing more compared to Red Bull? I don't think they were struggling. I just think it was more Red Bull's new upgrade gave them that extra pace, and also Red Bull were definitely pushing a lot more today than they have done in previous days. We have to remember, Leclerc did his best time on a tyre that is probably 0.3 of a second slower than the tyre Verstappen did his time on. So I don't think Ferrari struggled. I just think Red Bull showed a turn of pace that nobody saw coming. I think that's just what happened. Hopefully, though, Ferrari will still be in the fight this season. Adam Osborne, what do you think the gap is between the top 3 teams in the midfield? Well, I'd actually say it's the top 4 teams. Ferrari, Red Bull, McLaren, Mercedes. That's the top 4. And then probably 0.3 to half a second back to the Alpha Tauris and Alpines. And then probably, I don't know, another 2 or 3 tenths to like Aston Martin, Williams, Haas, Alfa Romeo. I don't think, honestly, there's that much separating the field. I think overall there's probably, from Red Bull, who I think have the best car just about, to the back of the grid, there's probably 2 seconds, maybe 2.5 seconds covering the field at most, but I think it's probably 2 seconds. And then between the 1 second and the 2 seconds is really just the midfield teams compared to Red Bull. Do you think Ferrari are sandbagging? Not really. They don't tend to really sandbag that hard, Ferrari, in testing. They tend to push a bit harder than other teams. Off Driz United. Chazar, I heard Mick Schumacher got P2 in the extra hours they got early for Haas. Haas looking strong. True, but I don't think that's much of a representative lap, to be honest. Maybe the cars aren't going full beans. Mercedes have extra pace, or maybe they're sandbagging with Haas pace earlier. I think Mercedes will probably show more pace than they showed today, and over testing overall. But I don't think they have that much extra speed, to be honest. I agree. Says, I agree with your point about the pressure on Ferrari, but rather than Leclerc, I think Sainz can carry that team in that scenario. He seems that type of guy. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I mean, we have to remember Carlos Sainz, obviously he's older. He's been in Formula 1 longer. Carlos Sainz has been in Formula 1 now for 7 years. When Leclerc has been, 4, 5, I think? And Sainz he's been around, isn't he? He's been around a lot. He raced at Toro Rosso for 2.5, almost 3 years, then Renault for a year, and then McLaren, now Ferrari. He's almost had a full F1 career pretty much by now. A lot of drivers don't even get to this point of 7-8 years in Formula 1. So he's definitely got that experience, and he is well, I'm not going to say the meme. I'm not going to do the meme, but he's a cool, calm guy. That's all I'll say. Deep says, I love George Russell, but I sadistically hope he gets overtaken by Albon in a Williams after waiting a lifetime to be a Merc driver. It would be quite funny if that happened. Thomas Dickinson says Leclerc will be number one. Reliability cost him at Monaco and Hungary. He had legs on Sainz. Let's not forget, I mean, Monaco, that was his fault. That's why he didn't win that race. And then Hungary, yeah. No doubt he was unlucky with that. I'm trying to think of other races where he didn't score that many points for whatever reason. Was it Russia as well, where he retired and he was on like 5th place? Thing is with Sainz though, if you go back and look at the whole season, I actually looked at a couple qualifying sessions. There were a couple where Sainz didn't even get into Q3 because of an issue. I think Saudi Arabia, Carlos ended up in 15th place or something, and I think he ended up ahead of Leclerc in the race or something. So Sainz had his problems too. Hardeep says, I think Leclerc's the faster driver, but can just see him taking more spins than Sainz. Also, I can't see any way Merc can solve these issues back at the factory. I wouldn't say it's impossible, like your comment at the end says there, but it's going to be harder than I think people realise. I will say, I mean, I like Carlos Sainz a lot, but I do agree. Charles Leclerc is faster. He is the better driver in terms of pure speed and talent, but he does have an aggressive side that sometimes sees him in the wall or, you know, having a bit of a get together with other cars. So we do have to remember that also. But yeah, no doubt Charles Leclerc is a quicker driver. We saw that last season. I mean, if you look at the start of last season, he qualified 4th, I think, in the first 2 races. And then, I think, was it Spanish Grand Prix even? He qualified 4th. Then he was on pole for 2 races. So, like, the first 7 races of last season, he was, like, averaging 3rd on the grid or something. And that was in last year's car. So, yeah, no doubt, Leclerc's very quick, but I think that's what we saw last season, is despite Leclerc being very quick in the race, in the qualifying, Sainz would bounce back in the race. And Carlos is a very good race driver. He's very similar to Fernando Alonso is Carlos, where in the race he's very adaptable and very, very good. Can Russell, asks Thomas Dickinson, can Russell outscore Hamilton over 22 races? I think it's unrealistic to expect that. I'd probably say no. I like Russell. I think he's a really good driver, and I think he will probably be a world champion in the future, but I'm not sure I'd say for this season that he can, you know, beat Hamilton. I know there's a lot of people like kind of wishing that would happen, which I can kind of understand why, but I think people forget who he's going up against. He's going up against the greatest racing driver of all time, not just some guy. Williams choked. Would love to see Haas up there, but I can't see it happening at the moment. But to be fair, nothing could be worse than last year. True. Perez needs to prove that he can get good times in qualifying, and that is everything he needs to do to seal the deal with Red Bull. Yeah, I agree. Qualifying is his biggest weakness, because in the races he's got the pace and he's a very good overtaker and just general race driver. So yeah, I think as long as he can get on top of those issues in quali, then he should be doing better. Thomas Dickinson saying Sainz is steady, but Leclerc's one under immense pressure from Hamilton in Spa and Monza 2019. You need that to beat Max. Can't see Sainz outmuscling Max. I think to beat Max in a race, yes, but I mean, and what Leclerc did at Spa and Monza was phenomenal. just amazing driving, and he was under a lot of pressure. But there's the race winning pressure, and then there's championship pressure. Championship pressure is way bigger than, can I win the race? Rather than, can I win the championship? And if you thought that the pressure would be on Leclerc going into an Italian Grand Prix to win for Ferrari in normal circumstances was big, if you add on top the fact or possible fact that he could win the championship, it'll feel like the whole world is on his shoulders, which there's not a lot of people in the world who can deal with that. Let me see if there's any other comments here that I can read out. I don't think there are. Thank you guys for the comments, though. Really, really enjoying the comments and the new type of questions and all that. Great to see you all here. And yeah, hopefully next week you'll join me for the Bahrain Grand Prix. Talking of the Bahrain Grand Prix, let's now get into the... let me get rid of this as well. Let me now get into my schedule on the channel for next week. And like I said, there is plenty coming up on the channel. So here is next week's schedule. So first off will be a recorded video on Wednesday. Don't know what time it will be out on that particular day, but it will be out on Wednesday. And what it will be is a season preview for the 2022 Formula 1 season. I'll go through all the teams, all the drivers, give my thoughts as to what will happen this season, and I will give my top 5 or maybe top 10 predictions for the Drivers' Championship and Constructors' Championship. So if you want to see or hear what I think will happen this season, then make sure to watch that video on Wednesday. Then on Thursday, I will be live at 8 PM. By the way, all these times that you see for all the streams below the season preview, those are all UK times, so please do remember that. The Thursday at 8 PM, I will be live to preview the Bahrain Grand Prix. What we'll go through really is the reaction that has come from the second test and get into really maybe more of the data in regards to this test and really get into who is likely to succeed in the Bahrain Grand Prix. So yeah, I'll be going live with that at 8 PM on Thursday. And then at 2:45 PM on Friday afternoon, I will be live for a watch-along of Practice 2 in Bahrain. Then later on Friday night, I'll be live again at 8 PM to preview qualifying, where we'll go through, again, loads of data from the practice sessions, go into the news, and get into how all the teams are looking after another day of practice, which you could kind of say that testing is kind of like. Then I'll be live again on Saturday at 11:45 AM for a watch-along of Practice 3. Live again at 2:30 PM to watch along qualifying for the Bahrain Grand Prix, where, as Christian Horner famously said, everyone will drop their pants and see what they've got. And then on Sunday, the 20th of March, which is, of course, next Sunday, I will be at 12 PM firstly doing a race preview for the Bahrain Grand Prix. Then at 2:30 PM, we'll be doing a race watch-along, hopefully me being joined by my co-commentator Niblo for the first Grand Prix of the season. And then my race reaction stream will be as soon as possible after the race has finished. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pieces of content next week. 8 streams and 1 video. So yeah, next 3 days after today, there won't be any content, but that's really because I'll be making and editing the season preview to come out on Wednesday. And then after that, we will have plenty coming up on the channel for you guys to digest. And hopefully you'll join me and us for all of that. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for all of this coming up next week. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there. As well, don't forget to smash the like button and share this video and channel everywhere you can for, of course, the start of the new season next week. Comment down below. Let me know what you thought of pre-season testing and what you think the teams are looking like going into the new season. And also, for you guys in the chat, It'd be great, honestly, to see you next week for the Bahrain Grand Prix, because it is going to be, I think, a very close and competitive Bahrain Grand Prix. As well, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at ChazHD5 for updates on videos or streams that I'm going live with. Make sure to follow me there. And as well, don't forget to join my Discord server, link below in the description, for more content like this. But guys, until my season preview for 2022 on Wednesday and the rest of the stuff coming up for the Bahrain Grand Prix all next week. Until then, guys, it has been me, Chazzer HD. Goodbye.